Hello, everybody. We are live here for Tuesday Talks. Now, Tuesday Talks is all about getting to know an individual, finding out what makes them tick, what do they care about, how their career reflects that, and what motivates them to keep going. Now, today's guest is none other than Harry. I am not going to even attempt to pronounce his second name. I suppose we can just ask him to say all that. Right, I see you there, Harry. Let me just invite you up. Hello, Harry. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm good. I had you on video a second ago, and now when I've joined, I can't see the video again. Never
No,
mind.
not again, not again. So I suppose we just have to. You just have to imagine. You've seen me how I look, so just imagine I'm there.
I- I've just seen my friend Cynthia join. Interesting. All right. Hello, Cynthia. That's who I was staying with the last few days, actually.
Nice, nice, nice. I know you're in the States at the moment and you're traveling. So before we get into all that, let the audience who don't know you, let us know who you are, what are you doing, and the biggest question that will also kick off our conversation will be like, Harry, why do you do it? So yeah, take it away.
Okay, so how I would describe myself is health, vitality, and longevity coach, speaker, author. Effectively, what I do is I help people feel 20 years younger, have the energy they had 20 years ago, in a nutshell. Help them feel superhuman, as it were. That's really what I do. The reason why I do it is a bit of a longer story. Depends how much we go into really here. Um, so probably I would say the journey started around 13 years ago. I used to work in the city at the London Stock Exchange, and I was into NLP, neuro linguistic programming. I guess a branch of psychology you could call it, although psychologists probably won't like it being described like that. Anyway, that all led me down a personal development route. That personal development route led me to see people who were operating life at a different level to how most people are, from their health, their finances, their productivity. And that got me interested and intrigued. I started going down the health route. I was always into fitness and that aspect, but I didn't really equate health with fitness. I thought if you're fit, then you're healthy. And I started seeing people who were defying what was normal when it came to longevity or aging or disease. And I got really curious and I started studying all different modalities, different well-being practices, and other practices that ultimately elevate your life. And when I saw that many people were doing it, I adopted it as my own. For example, if I saw 9 out of 10 people were talking about meditation, then I thought, okay, maybe I give meditation a go. If I saw 8 out of 10 people always talking about the value of green juices, then I thought, okay, I'll give that a go. Ultimately, over about 2 or 3 year periods, I made over 200 different changes to my life, and I saw that my energy, my vitality, my productivity, my relationships, my resistance to illness and disease all escalated massively. And at the same time, I was working. So I left the London Stock Exchange, and I ended up working for Sainsbury's head office, contracting there. And because you're a contractor, you realise that actually you're going to be the first to get fired if they need to make budget cuts, and you have to perform better than everybody else. And if you're ill, you're not going to get paid. So I really recognize that as a solopreneur, freelancer, whatever you might call it, maybe you're a business owner watching this, you are your business. You are
Hmm.
your business. If you don't have your health, your vitality, you don't have anything. And I think COVID probably showed that to a lot more people in terms of you can have all the best strategies when it comes to making sales or marketing or creating copy or whatever your job is. But if you don't have energy, if you don't have vitality, if you don't have your health, then all of that's useless. So health is really the fundamental thing that breeds everything else. So that's in a nutshell why I do what I do, because I saw people who really were operating life at a level that they could do more with. And I was in that level myself. I never felt particularly bad, but I realized that once I started on this journey, I had way more that I could go to. And so I'm just trying to teach some of these ideas that work for the majority of people, and a discovery that I made about 10 years ago. And that's really the foundation of why I do what I do, just so that we can all unleash our inner superhuman, as I would say.
And I love this. I love this because we had a little chat in Tallinn, Estonia as well. So there is a little for anybody who is viewing this live on Instagram. There is a little video of us talking to Harry about it already as well, where you mention all this similar drive as well. So I wanted to ask this question, and I believe I missed out on the last one. Is like, so what is driving all this behavior in you? Like, what's driving this to become that superhuman, to become the best person?
I guess what's driving it for me is, I guess one of my biggest fears is leaving this planet without having reached my full potential. And I think that's what drives it for me, is that I think that I think, I can't remember who the author was, or some author, I'm not sure. He said, like, when my life is done, I want to be thoroughly used up. And so I think for me, life is also about experiences, but in order to have those experiences, a lot of the time you need to be physically and mentally able to do those things. And so I think for me, what drives it is that I just want to understand. I've always been quite curious, and so I've always been quite curious about the world around me. It's probably why in fact it is why I did a physics degree, is because I wanted to understand how things work and fundamental nature of things. And I'm still curious about that now. And in fact, actually, where I'm in Sedona in Arizona, and we can go on to a little bit later. It's a little bit more, I guess, woo-woo spiritual in places, but there's lots of hiking and stuff. But it's all about, I guess, having a greater understanding about the world around us, about your own physiology, about the planet, about humanity. And I think that's what drives me. And when I started learning things, I think what drove me was irritation at the beginning. I started learning things that I was irritated that I hadn't been aware of them before. And I felt that we'd been lied to a lot of our lives when it came to certain health practices, or certain life practices, really. And that irritated me. So what drove me initially was this annoyance that, why have I learned this only now? And what if other people don't know this as well? I always think that I'm the last person on earth to learn anything, and that, to my detriment, means that I held back in saying things, or I don't say things because I think, okay, they're obvious, or everyone knows this stuff. So yeah, what drives me really is helping illuminate these ideas to other people.
Wow, that's actually an amazing journey in terms of what drives you in terms of eliminating other people. And what I heard also there was like you're also going through thinking that if you're the last person to find that out, that means everybody knows this by now already. Sometimes what I've come across is also that you might be the only one who knows that what you know, right? I clearly don't know half the stuff because when I came around to your place last time, I know there was a wonderful barbecue and your place that you hosted. It was amazing. Thank you very much. And like I saw half of the stuff. Like, I have no clue what all this stuff is. Like, you've got a whole like a workout gym area in that one area, and I was like, yeah, I have no clue. Right? So I think there's obviously some learning to do on your part as well. Like, not everybody knows what you know, so you definitely need to share that.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask, this was like, okay, you are in the US at the moment. Obviously, you reside in the UK, but you're visiting US at the moment. Take us through that. Why you're there at the moment?
So why I'm here? Did you say? Because your volume is a little bit low, unfortunately. When I lost your picture, I also lost your volume. Beforehand, it was a bit better. But why I'm in the US? Did you say?
Yes.
Yeah. So effectively, I had 3 weeks where I wasn't going to be doing any workshops in London, and I was away for quite a bit, as you know, in Tallinn, Estonia in July. I've been home in August, and ultimately I had some air miles as well to use up, which I'd been storing up for a while, and I had them with Virgin, so there was limited options in terms of where I could go. And my friend Cynthia, who's also a Mind Valley person, actually, I haven't seen her this year because she didn't come to Tallinn, and I thought, you know what, why don't I come and visit her? So I gave her like a day or two's notice because I only decided, I think, 2 days before my flight to to book this place to come here. And so I said, hey, do you fancy a house guest? And she was like, sure. And so I booked it on the Friday, flew out on the Tuesday, went to Vegas for first time actually in 22 years. But last time I went to Vegas, it was very different. I was with my friend who lives in Austin. He's from London, but he moved to Austin 5 years ago. And I was with him and I was backpacking. So I'd been backpacking around the world for about 2 years by that stage. And so we did it Vegas differently. And this time I'm not doing the Vegas. I'm not doing, the casinos and the hotels. My friend Cynthia lives in the suburbs, but we've had it kind of chilled. We did some nice hikes the other day. It was really nice, actually. We went out into, what was it called? Red Rock Canyon. We went out there, had some meditative experiences, let's say, and it was really nice. And so I, to be honest, needed to get out because I wanted to explore a little bit more about this area. And Sedona had been mentioned by both Cynthia and another friend of mine, and of the people I met in Vegas as a place to go. And originally I was going to just drive from Vegas to Austin to see my other friend, which is a long drive, but then it wouldn't have done Sedona any justice. And so what I've decided to do is just do a trip to Sedona for 3-4 days, go back to Vegas and fly to Austin to see my mate. So I'm in Sedona, which is, I don't know how much I can show you if I stand up. It's going to be quite bright. Let me flip the camera around. You can't really see too much, unfortunately, because other than blue sky, but I want to show you there's loads of amazing just amazing rock formations, and there's all these what they call vortexes, which are effectively, I guess, different frequencies that operate.
Yeah.
So the Earth has got a frequency, from what I remember from years and years ago when I was studying it, the Schumann resonance. I can't remember how many hertz that is. It's 400 and something hertz. Basically, everything has a vibration, everything has a frequency, and I think there are certain pockets in the Earth that have different frequencies. And I remember when I was looking into Nikola Tesla years ago, I think he postulated or hypothesized that there are these different vortexes in the Earth where actually you can generate energy from. And his whole thing, I think his life's mission was this free energy society and to create energy out of the air, effectively out of nothing. But actually it's not out of nothing. So I told you before that I did physics at university.
Yes.
And the one equation that everybody seems to know from physics is Einstein's famous equation, E equals mc squared.
Of course.
And effectively what that equation is saying is that E, energy, equals m, the mass of something, c, the speed of light, times itself squared. So effectively, and this is also why my thing is all about energy and vitality, because everything comes down to energy and vitality. Like I said, if you don't have that, you don't have anything. Anyway, Nikola Tesla, who I like what he did, his whole thing could be summed up, and I think about this all the time, this quote: if you want to understand the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. And I think about that a lot when it comes to many aspects that I come across in life. So anyway, everything's got an energy or a vibration, and energy can neither be created nor destroyed, just converted from one form to another. So his whole idea was to try and pockets of the universe, effectively. And we're doing that in particle physics now, dark matter, there's a lot of energy there. So these vortexes, I don't know again too much about them, but I guess they have a slightly different frequency from the other aspects of the Earth that are pulling out, and they're supposedly quite sacred places. But regardless of all that, there's lots of hiking around here. There's lots of more woo-woo things here, like people crystal healing. And I was actually walking around town today, and it was quite funny. So I was I was looking at a sign. It was talking about taking an aura, the photograph of your aura,
Oh,
and then this
interesting.
lady from, turns out, North Carolina came up to me, and she was like, "Oh no, don't go into that," and she started going on about her Bible teachings and everything, and I listened, and I was respectful and all of that. I wasn't really there for the aura stuff. I was just thinking, how is it that they're taking a photo of your aura? Because even though I'm kind of into all this stuff, I'm also deeply kind of a science based at heart.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I'm always wanting to know. Actually, so I was in the crystal shop before because I was like, okay, I don't know too much about crystals. Again, I understand everything has a frequency and a vibration, but they're claiming this thing can help with your EMFs, and this thing helps with your focus, and this with your third eye. And I'm like, yeah, but how? How do you know that? So I'm kind of like, I always think when I go into that, I imagine I'm my brother-in-law who is deeply skeptical of pretty much everything I ever tell him. So I kind of go in with that idea, and I think, if I'm being the skeptic here and I buy this little rock, how is it really protecting me? Yes, there's a bit of a study that says this rock can help protect against EMFs, but that's probably only going to work in a certain situation when it's encased in it, not if you've got some weird pendant around your neck.
Of
Um,
course.
yeah, so I like this stuff and I like to know more about it, but I'm also somewhat suspicious and skeptical, even though I believe a lot of this stuff. In fact, actually,
So
at the moment, oh, sorry, you were about to say something.
no, no, yeah, yeah. No, so I was gonna say, so it's more of like you're dipping in and out, but you are looking for that scientific proof of, oh yeah, I understand it, what you're saying, like we can, well, we can shrug it off by saying, oh yeah, yes, woo woo stuff. But yeah, I understand it, how it works, because I understand energies. I understand everything has that vibration, everything has that energy. It's gonna maybe help me with the EMF stuff, but maybe there is a certain quantity that is required, right? Not just like little pendant hanging around my neck.
Exactly, and the challenge is that a lot of people who deal in this work or selling stuff or doing this stuff don't really understand enough of it to explain it. And going back to Einstein, he said, if you can't explain it simply enough, you don't understand it well enough. Like he
Mm,
would be able to explain really complicated concepts in a really simple way that a 5-year-old could understand it. So, for example, relativity. Okay, the theory of relativity, that he had two theories of relativity: the special theory of relativity and the general theory of relativity. The special theory of relativity, which he came up with in 1905, was the one about time and space. And so he was explaining relativity to someone, and I don't know how true any of this is, but this is what I remember. So if you're sitting on a park bench, right, and you chat to a pretty lady, assuming you're into pretty ladies, right, an hour might feel like a minute. If you put your hand on a hot stove, a minute will feel like an hour. That is relativity.
yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
So, it's explain that concept in a simple way. And I think, so I was chatting to the lady who was talking about the evils that all these mystics, and, she was actually talking about yoga as well. She was like, yoga's no good. It's, the Bible says this and that. And I was like, okay, but where specifically in the Bible does it talk about what you're talking about? And what specifically are you talking about that I need to watch? And she couldn't tell me any of that. And then she was going on about good and evil, and I said, yeah, but how one needs the other, right? You can't have anything that's good if you don't have
Ex-
evil, because
exactly.
everything is relative to everything else, right? We live in a relativistic universe, so no one is tall or short unless you're talking about them relative to someone else. No one is good or bad unless you're talking about them relative to something else. And truly speaking, nothing is good nor bad except for your perception of it anyway.
Mm,
And so, I mean, a lot of it on the podcast that I mentioned earlier before we came on air, that I run with a co-host, my mate Nick, that I've known for about 10 years through some cycling work we do. One of the big things I always talk about is nothing has any meaning except for the meaning that you give it. And this is
Yeah.
such an important concept to understand, and people don't grasp it. Like nothing means anything except for the meaning you choose to give it, right? If someone doesn't text you back straight away, it doesn't mean anything, right? You create a story in your head about what it means. If you break your leg, it's not a bad thing or a good thing. It's just the meaning that you put behind that. Or you lose your job, or the pandemic hits, right? Nothing is good or bad. It's always your response to something that determines whether you perceive it to be good or bad. And one of the fundamental things I teach is about mindset, right? So I talk about health and well-being, but really it all stems from how you think about things and reframing, gratitude, your values, your identity, beliefs. This is why my brand is called the Thought Gym, because it all starts
Mm.
with thinking and the mindset first. You can't A lot of time people try and change behaviors before they change the mindset behind the behavior, and that's why they go back to the same old patterns. um, so yeah, really what I teach is a holistic health and well-being philosophy, but it starts with the mind a lot of the time. And there are other ways to change things through the body, through experiences, but ultimately, your mindset is so important.
And I really love that you expanded onto that the experience of yours and gone a little bit more deeper in terms of the lady you met who was obviously trying to take you away from the opposite side, like yoga and everything. Um, but also,
Yeah,
so
I didn't tell her that I was a yoga teacher as well, because I was like, oh, I was like, and also what was going through my mind initially, it was quite an interesting interaction, because interestingly, initially when she started saying what she was saying, I was like, I went into internally, not externally, but internally, I went into a bit of a defense mode of like,
oh
okay, she's obviously Bible Belt area of the US and does this, that, and the other. But then I thought to myself, no, let me just stay open, stay curious, and ask her questions, and
hear
find out.
hear her out. Yeah.
Yeah, because I have a fault within me, a weakness within me, which I've always had, which is this: I already know this syndrome, or what has this person got to teach me? And I've had to humble that a few times over the years, and I don't know everything. I don't know anything. In fact, it was Socrates that I really like, who said, "The more I know, the more I realize I don't know." And I think that I came across that when I started doing a lot of the work I did. In the beginning, you think, "Oh my God, I know all this stuff," and you think, "I need to tell everyone. I need to thrust this onto people." Then I realized, actually, what I've started to learn is just a small fraction of what I could be learning, or what I
Mm.
could know,
Mm.
and it kind of humbles you a little bit. So when I was with this woman, I was just thinking, you know what? I believe what I believe, right, which is fine. That me going in, seeing this person is not going to be the ultimate evil, um, but let me understand what she believes. Let me understand her
Mm.
position on things.
Mm.
So
That's quite interesting as well. Like obviously, you're being open-minded in terms of, okay, let's hear what you have to say, ask question, being curious, because that's all we can do is to be curious of like hear other person out. Again, everybody has their own narrative, and you took us through your narrative as well. Like why you are doing certain things, and why you also believe that at one point you're like, oh yeah, I think I know it all, but then again, hang on a minute, if I know a lot, I don't know it all. So that's there as well. So
yeah,
it's quite interesting to hear this dynamics of like, oh wow, and conflicts. That's what I'm hearing as well, the conflicts to take away. Now I'm gonna like divert you away a little bit from all of this that you've just shared. I mean, it's amazing takeaway for everybody who's been listening to us on Instagram live, and I will also suggest, if they are already loving this conversation, what they've been listening to us already, to check out the another live that we had on Estonia as well, which touches a little bit about yourself and what you do on there as well. It's a short video as well. They can check it out on the page there as well. So the thing I wanted to know as well was like, okay, so you've been doing quite a lot of stuff. You're obviously a mindset advocate. You're heavily invested into the mindset. You're obviously heavily invested into the health and well-being and exercise and fitness side of things, that what I've witnessed anyway. And so you do all these things. is there a particular ritual or routine that you've come across, obviously, that you think is working for you, that you are able to share for others to try it on? No, everything works for everybody, as we all know, so they can at least try and see if that works for them. What you think is best that you thought, okay, and this is working for me, and I am doing this every day, or a ritual? Because I know you do a lot. You do a lot of
Yeah,
stuff.
I do a lot. So it's a hard question to answer. Firstly, I would say have a ritual or routine is useful. I know a lot of. I used to just wake up by accident, and I think, oh, the day is the day. But the reality, that's not how it is, right? You set up the day that you want. So I have again, morning routines, evening routines is one of those things that I heard about from, like, 7 out of 10 people talked about morning routines and evening routines, and I thought, oh, I hadn't thought about it before. So I would say setting up the day for success is important. Now, what that looks like to you is going to be different from what it looks like to me. I have a somewhat comprehensive morning routine. However, here's the big however, or the big but. Although at the beginning I was a little bit more rigid with it, now I have a bit more flexibility. So what I always tell people is have a framework, but have flexibility within that framework, because you're not always going to be able to do what you want to do. So, for example, this morning my routine was slightly different. I actually got up at 6 because I was going to do a call to record the podcast with Nick, and his calls overran, and so that didn't work out in the end. So I didn't have the setup before that either, because I was getting up at 6 and the call was at 6:30. But normally what I have as a basic routine is this, which you can do anywhere. So if you think about wanting to be a high performance person, I would think, and I know that you like your cars, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
you might like this analogy. But a high performance vehicle, which maybe you'll agree with, maybe you'll not, because you're a bit more into cars than me, I would call a BMW a high performance vehicle, right? So if you want to think about the letters BMW as the most basic thing to get vitality and energy and actually set your day up for success. So B stands for breathing. So when you wake up in the morning, what that means is, it could mean many things, right? It could be taking some deep breaths. It could be meditating. It could be giving yourself time to breathe in the morning by not going to your mobile phone for like half an hour or an hour. For me, it usually means breathing and meditation. So that may be, if I'm in a rush, for example, and I don't have time to do 15-minute meditation, I've got like these 7-minute things and 8-minute ones that I might do. If I don't have time for that, I might just do some breathing. If I don't have time for a structured breath work, I will breathe with intention consciously in the shower. So there's always a way around that. The next one is M, right? BMW, right? So B was for breathing. M is for movement. So move your body. That does not have to be your main exercise of the day, but move your body 5 minutes. So I've got a few different routines. I mean, for years I've been rebounding, which is jumping on a mini trampoline in the morning, and I do 15 to 25 minutes of that, not just rebounding. In fact, actually, if people go to my YouTube channel, which is also called The Thought Gym, and type in rebounding, you should see a few different rebounding videos, but there's one which I think is about a 15-20 minute one called Morning Rebounding Routine. So I do that routine, but before I even do that, before I even go downstairs to do that, I have a 5-minute mobility, stretching, movement exercise thing that I do, which I've been doing while I've been here as well. So the idea is move the body. If you can't do 5 minutes, do 3 minutes. If you can't do 3 minutes, do 1 minute. But move the body. Again, this is not your main exercise. That can be done later in the day or later in the morning. Move the body. And then W stands for water, which ironically, I forgot my water bottle in the room here. I don't normally go anywhere without my water bottle, so I'm getting really thirsty. But drink water before you do anything else. So I would say probably you want to be drinking half a litre to a litre if you can. And the reason I say that is because you may lose up to about a litre of water overnight through exhaling and breathing. Not even through sweat, just through breathing overnight. So when you wake up in the morning, you're already about a litre deficient in water. And most people, they go for, other drinks first thing in the morning. I'm not here to bash your coffee, although I personally don't drink coffee or tea anymore. That was one of the other things I changed. And the reason is I thought to myself, if I need caffeine to wake me up in the morning, something else is wrong elsewhere. And caffeine is the most well-used drug in the world, number one drug in the world. I think that it has its place in certain aspects. For example, there are some studies that show it increases performance and blah, blah, blah. But what I would say is don't have any caffeine in that first couple of hours from waking up, because also you're losing the effects of that, because your body's already started to release cortisol in the morning to get you up anyway, and you're basically losing the effects of caffeine. So what I would say is, ideally, first 3 hours, just be drinking water, or generally just water. I mean, for me today, actually, it was a bit of a different day. I probably went the first 6 hours of the day just drinking water. I think I got up at 6. By the time I had anything other than water, it was gone midday. But normally I would go, say, 3 hours or so before having even my juice. So BMW, breathe or meditate, M for move, W for water. And that can be a basic routine that can be done in a very short amount of time, and that will set you up differently. Now, I've got other routines. One of the other things that I would say that I do that really, I think, moves the needle for me personally, is a smoothie. So I make a juice and a smoothie in the morning, not fruit, just vegetables, a little bit of fruit in the smoothie. Avocado, nuts, seeds, all sorts of things. It's a proper mission. While I've been here, I've been making a slightly different version of it at my friend's house. She has a Vitamix, which is a high quality blender like I've got at home, and she's got tons and tons of powders and potions. So I've been making that with what she's got there for her and whoever will drink it. In fact, her 9-year-old kid actually was drinking it the other day, and I think quite enjoyed it. But for me, I think that's my secret sauce, because I know that, and you might have seen me with it when I was in Tallinn, but that keeps me full. It gives me, probably the smoothie gives me, not even counting the green powders, gives me around 6 to 10 portions of vegetables. If you count the green powders, we're looking at more like 15 or more. And then the juice gives me another 6. So already by lunchtime, if I have lunch, I've had, I don't know, somewhere between 10 and 20 portions of vegetables.
Wow.
So yeah, that's a principle I call front loading. So I front load my nutrition, which is I try and get the good stuff in at the beginning of the day, so that actually towards the end of the day, when I've got less control over what might happen, I'm not as stressed about it. And actually, I wanted to say this on air so that all people can hear this, because I was chatting to my friend Cynthia the other day, and we were talking about health and well-being, and she was saying, yeah, but some of the things I think I've seen you do, I don't think you're being as congruent with health and well-being as what you purport to be. And I said, how do you mean? And she goes, oh, because you went and had chips the other day. So to put it in context, I was walking up and down the strip by myself in Vegas for about 4 or 5 hours. I hadn't had anything really. And so I'd done over about 30,000 steps that day as well. And I hadn't really, it's really, really, really hard to find food in America. Like, well, not food, but like what I would call edible food. Because I don't know what they're doing to their population, but I think they're slowly trying to kill them. But the food is just terrible. The food is terrible. I'm sorry, anyone listening from America, if you think your food is good, you need to go outside of America and see what real food tastes like. Yeah, it's a story. But so anyway, I went to In-N-Out Burger, and I didn't have a burger, but I bought some chips there. And the reason I bought chips there as opposed to say McDonald's, because McDonald's in the UK, they have 3 ingredients, right? Potato, salt, and I guess oil. In America, their McDonald's chips have up to 27 different ingredients. Most of them are trying to kill you. So In-N-Out Burger, they just have like 2 or 3 ingredients, and I had them. And I will fully admit here, live to everybody, I have a weakness for things like ice cream, chocolate, crisps, and chips, or whatever you guys call it in the US. But that's okay, right? Well, what I teach is not perfection. What I teach is balance and awareness. And so I'm aware of what certain things do to my body at quite a specific level. And so I will choose to have things with the awareness of what it may or may not do. I'm never here to teach absolutism, because actually in the real world it doesn't often work. Um, I'm here to teach balance and understanding yourself a little bit more, and awareness. And sometimes, yes, I want a packet of crisps, or yes, but I'm doing it occasionally. And I think we were talking about Coca-Cola. So she was telling me, so she's running this wellness thing next year in Miami, which you should check out. It's called Wellness Week in Miami. And I think she was talking about someone she was interacting with was drinking Coca-Cola. And she was like, yeah, how can that be in tune with being in wellness? And I agree with her, right? Coca-Cola is not a wellness drink. I probably have had, on average, I would say over the last 15 years, one Coke a year, which probably is still too much. Um, but sometimes I think, okay, I'll have a Coke, right? As long as you're doing it, and I'm not here to say that is anywhere close to being a health food. It'll probably be detrimental even in the short term. But, occasionally, like once every 6 months or once a year, I'm not going to sweat about it. If I'm having it once a week, once a day for sure, but once a week or even, or once a month, that's probably too much for me. So, yeah. Anyway, so there you go. I've admitted it live. I'm not just eating vegetables. I eat ice cream, although it would be vegan ice cream to be fair at the moment, because I don't have dairy for the last 15 years. But if I can find a vegan ice cream, I will eat it. And again, with the crisps, I always think, right, I try and go the crisps that are like ready salted, just like salt and crisps, and maybe salt and pepper or something like that. I'm not going to go for the one with 15 different ingredients. I won't actually even get the ready salted ones here, because they add more things in America. They add way more things in the basic crisp.
Yeah.
So there you go, folks. I've admitted it.
So here we go, guys. We've heard it here, and I suppose this is the life you've heard. Everybody, everybody's Harry's admitted he drinks Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
Because
So
that's the
I
first
actually
thing everybody.
write about it. I'm writing a book at the moment. Well, for the last several years, I've been writing this book, but hopefully it will come out this year, on my health philosophy. But I do talk about this in that book. I say, one of my principles is front loading, try and get everything in at the beginning of the day, and that way I can, relax for the rest of it. But also, if you do see me walking down the street one day and I'm eating a bag of crisps, don't take a photo and post it on Instagram and say, gotcha, see this health guru is eating crisps. Because firstly, I don't really teach nutrition anyway. What I teach an idea called Panlo 80/20, which is my nutritional idea. But really, I'm teaching a whole aspect of well-being, whether it's to do with meditation, your values, your identity, movement, breathing. Like I basically teach a little bit about a lot of things rather than a lot about one thing, because I think most people need breadth rather than depth when it comes to well-being. It's all well and good being the breath work expert, but then if you don't know anything about lifting weights and movement and, I don't know, meditation or dietary stuff, then you're missing out a big piece of the puzzle.
And I really love that. So you're obviously covering all the bases of like, okay, yeah, it's not just about breath work. It's also about having a balance of every little thing. Yeah, it's okay to have that occasional bag of crisps or chips or a bottle of Coke or whatever that is. It's okay to have that couple of slices of pizza now and then as well, I guess, right?
Well, yeah, and you have to determine what occasional means. Like some people go, oh, occasional is like every week. I'm like, well, it depends on what that thing is you're having. For example, I don't really go out and eat pizza, but I might make a pizza now and then, but I'll make it with a gluten-free base, pretty much about 6 portions of vegetables on it. A healthy
that's a healthy
version of a
pizza.
pizza, right? The bread is probably not the healthiest, but it's still fine. But it's mainly vegetables on a bread base. But if I'm going to go out, even when it comes to drinking, I rarely drink. But when I was in Tallinn, I was drinking more frequently than I would normally. But I recognise that in Tallinn. So my philosophy, which we won't go into now, but people can watch I've got a TED talk or TEDx talk on it. It's called the how to unlock your inner superhuman. If you search my name and TEDx on YouTube, you'll find it. But in there, I talk about my philosophy, and this is actually my purpose in life, is to bring this idea out to the world. And it's called the Leadership Beat Model. And the BEAT, B-E-A-T, stand for the 4 things that go into health and well-being. They came about from, at the beginning of this conversation, I talked about I did 200 different changes or so to my life.
Yes.
When I looked at them all on one piece of paper, I drew a massive piece of paper on the floor and I wrote down all 200-300 things, and I worked out that all of those hundreds of things fell into 4 areas, and they stand for the letters in the word BEAT, right? The Leadership Beat Model. But what I teach is that sometimes you can be very successful focusing on one tiny aspect of that beat model, but it won't last forever, right? Let's say, so an aspect is passion, right? So when you've got a lot of passion for something, you're going to have a lot of energy for it. You can find a founder or an entrepreneur who's got such passion for what they do that they will go on 4 hours sleep a night for the next 15 years and hardly eating anything well. But whether it's in 15 years time or 5 months time or 20 years time, at some point it's going to break. If you don't have balance in the other areas, you're going to break. Now, when you are seeking balance, for example, in Tallinn, an aspect of the beat model that I fall down on is an aspect called connection. That forms part of the A part of the beat model. A stands for activity, but part of activity is connection. That is physical connection, social connection, emotional connection to others and yourself. And I recognized that I was going to Tallinn, Mind Valley University, which I always do, for connection. That's the primary reason I go, which many people go for that. But that sometimes comes at the expense of things like my sleep, which forms part of the T aspect of the beat model, which stands for tranquility. It also means that sometimes I don't eat as well, because maybe I'm not going to have my normal juices, or maybe I'm going to drink more, which is also going to affect my sleep. I'm okay with that, because for me, going into that situation with awareness, I was like, okay, I can sustain this level for about 3 or 4 weeks before things go bad health-wise. And actually, because I've got quite a big health bank account, I can do that for about 4 or 5 weeks before, you start to get the colds and the illnesses and stuff flaring up because of the lack of sleep and the drinking. But I was going for the social connection, right? And you're one person that I met there, right? For example.
Yes.
So I'm going for that social connection at the expense of other things. And then when I go back, I dial back in the sleep, I dial back in the nutrition, I dial back on other things, and then I can hopefully maintain a level of social connection. So for me, what I teach is all about balance, which actually I'm not sure how much people can see. I've got this yin yang thing. These are the 4 areas of the beat model. There's my brand, the Thought Gym. On the back of my shirt, which I can't really show you at the moment, but it has those things in. But the yin yang is all about balance, right? And so we have to determine where that balance lies for us individually, but that comes through experience.
I really love that, and you're expanding into this as well, so the people can take away how to find that balance and the yin yang, obviously. And thanks for sharing that logo that you have on your top. And I've actually never seen you without one. That's I've just noticed now. I'm like, hang on a minute, have I ever actually seen it without one? No, I haven't.
Probably
So
not. I
like,
got a couple of these tops made up. So.
Yeah, exactly. You always have one. And I also remember when you were mentioning Tallinn, I was like, I remember you are always like, because you were by the next to the sea, so you were always going for that early morning dip. I won't call it skinny dipping, but you were going for the dip.
Yeah, it was not a proper swim. I'm actually by a pool at the moment as well, although I haven't gone in yet. You know what was happening there? So because of the Airbnb I got, it was near the sea, and I thought to myself, you know what?
That's the Baltic Sea for everybody who's listening to us. It's the Baltic Sea,
but it wasn't that cold. It was like July, so it was about 18 degrees. I'm not sure what that works out in Fahrenheit, but it wasn't actually that cold. But it was almost as easy to go in the sea as it was to go in the shower, because it was so close initially. Then I had to move Airbnb, and it became further away. But I made a promise to myself when I arrived. I said, I'm going to go in the sea every day. And no one knew that promise. No one heard that promise. I didn't say it out loud, but I just said it to myself. And so I was going in the sea every day, and I was posting in the WhatsApp group that we had saying, "Hey, who wants to join me?" And a couple of times, my friend Ahmad, who was living about 30 seconds away, would join me. But other times, people would come join me. One or two people, and it was a great way to meet people. But I mean, I didn't have the consistency with the time of day, which would have worked for more people who said, "Oh, every day at 8 o'clock we're going to go in." But the reality is, I wanted to get up when I wanted to get up, and I tried to give people 45 minutes notice. I say, I'm going to go in 45 minutes, whoever's about, come join me. And there were days I didn't want to do it because, I don't know, I was being lazy, or I think on
Of
one of
course.
the final days, it was like 7 p.m. and I hadn't gone in because I'd been away somewhere. And I went in because I said I would. And
Mm.
and people, my friend Sebastian was saying, oh, when I think about you, often I don't think about necessarily health and well-being, but I think about discipline, right? Consistency. And
Yes.
I was trying to say to him, I'm not sure that it's about discipline. So this is what I try and teach people. People always say this to me. You're so disciplined, right? You do your smoothies and you take your blender with you and you cut your veg behind the day before and you do all that. It seems like discipline on the outside. It's not. It is fundamentally a mindset shift. So what happened to
Interesting.
me was a switch in my head that went about 12 years ago, and it changed how I looked at things. And the way I try and describe it, albeit not very eloquently a lot of the time, is if you imagine that when you were a child, you were really into sweets, right? But different kinds of sweets that you are into as an adult. Like I remember when I was a kid, and you're from the UK as well, but like there were all these like things like curly whirlies and
Oh yeah.
other other sweets, right? So you remember it, but you probably didn't think about it for a long time. Now, when you go into a shop now, it's not like discipline is stopping you from getting those particular chocolates or sweets. It's just not even in your consciousness, right?
Yes.
That's what it's like.
Yes.
It's like for me to eat the way I eat, it's not about discipline. It's not in my consciousness to do a different thing. So when I was doing the swim and stuff, is more about I made a promise to myself,
Mm.
and therefore I don't want to break that promise. Every time you break a promise to yourself, you lose a little bit more self-esteem, and you become more untrustworthy to yourself, and you don't really believe in yourself as much. And so for me, it was about sticking to my word, not the discipline to get in and do it. And actually, it was really nice. I think you missed it, but on the towards the final week, Wampa, one of the Mind Valley authors, was doing like a men's activation thing in the morning, and I was like, oh, I don't know if I can be getting up that early because I knew I was going to be out late doing the social thing. And I said, tell you what, I will go to it if we do a swim after that event. And we got about 20, 30 guys down at 9:30 for a swim, which was amazing. And then when I was in there, I said to him, hey, this would be great if we opened it up to other people, and we'll do it after the final closing ceremony. So it's like, yeah, that'd be great. And in the end, and there's a video on my Instagram stories of this, taken from a drone. We got about 50, 60 people down to the beach. We did like a half an hour
Wow.
activation with Wampa where he was doing some like, looks like really weird kind of cultish movements, but it was a combination of like, let's say, Qigong, breath work, moving meditation, drumming, sound therapy, all of that. And then we jumped in the water. So if people go to my Instagram, the Thought Gym, and go through the highlights, I've saved a lot of that stuff as MVU 2023 or something.
Yeah.
You'll be able to see us all do that stuff. But
Wow.
and the reason people came is because I was like there every day, and good or bad, people kind of knew me as the guy going swimming, um, and saw me. And actually, it was quite interesting. I had people a couple of times come up to me who I'd never met, and they came up to me at like a party or something, and they're like, "Oh, I just want to thank you. I went in the sea today, and you've been inspiring me." And I wasn't doing it necessarily to inspire people. I was actually doing it just to get some company, and it was kind of nice to be able to chat to people one on one there rather than in a big environment in the
Yeah.
busyness of the hub. So I got to know a lot of people doing those swims.
Wow. It's what I'm taking away from this obviously is, how people are seeing what you're doing. Obviously, you had a promise to yourself and you wanted to keep that promise to yourself and you wanted to honor yourself. You want to do it.
because we promise things to others and we try to keep that promise. Like if somebody says turn up here at 9 a.m. and blah blah blah, for whatever reason, and then you turn up because you're like, oh yeah, I've made promises so and so, but you make a promise to yourself.
Yeah.
You like, let the alarm be, and I'm gonna just like 10 more minutes in the bed, whatever, and then turns out to be 2 hours sleep after that. And
Yeah,
I love
exactly.
that you shared it. Like you went through that, and you're like, okay, no, I've made a promise to myself. I haven't shared it with the
Yeah.
world and everything, but it's for me to know, and I'm gonna do this. Whatever happens, I'm gonna do this. And obviously, yeah, for the people outside, it's coming across as consistency, discipline, which is actually how we see it as an outsider. It's like, ooh, like, look at this. Harry is very disciplined. He's going every morning. He's not a fixed time, but he's telling us like, okay, I'm going for a swim. Who wants to join? I'm like, wow, he's consistent, because that's how I saw it as well in the WhatsApp group where we were. Like, oh, Harry's like, oh, I'm going, and I'm literally, I think I was like literally 10 minutes walk from you, not that
Yeah.
far away. So if I wanted to, I could have, because I particularly chose in Thailand as well to be near the water, because water is like calming. I was like, if I
The
wake up
water
and
is
I
so
want to
good
just
for you.
open the door and just look outside, it was like, but and I was like, wow, okay. But I saw that as well. You were doing all of these things, and it is, in a way, it's also motivational. If you literally are inspiring other people who are maybe not joining you per se, like, okay, yeah, Harry's doing that, I want to join Harry, but they're doing it in their own way, of whatever version they are comfortable with, in dipping into the water, right? And the Baltic Sea. I mean, you said 80 degrees wasn't that
It's
cold
not.
enough, but I'm
I mean,
feeling
it's
the
not.
cold.
Let's not.
It's cold.
Let's make no mistake. It's not Cyprus weather. See, it's quite fresh. Although yesterday I went into the creek. So I asked a friend, um, um, or a friend of a friend, what I should do when I'm in Sedona, and they gave me the places I should visit. But then they said, oh, I think you should go into the creek, set an intention, and purify yourself or whatever. And I was like, oh, okay. So then I was like driving around trying to find a place to get into the creek, because it was a bit harder than it looks. And
Oh wow.
and so, and then you have to pay for parking or whatever. And I went in there, and that was colder, but not massively colder, but about 16. The coldest sea I've ever been in was in Brighton. This is without a wetsuit, by the way. It was in Brighton, the UK, last year, and that was, I think, 6 degrees. And we, went in with
Oh,
swimming trunks. That was super cold. That was,
I mean, I know the UK waters are always cold. 6 degrees.
yeah.
Oof.
I lasted like 2 minutes, maybe 2 minutes 10 seconds, and I was, yeah, so cold. I've been in 6 degrees with a wetsuit before in New Zealand when I was swimming with dolphins once, like 20 years ago, and I've been in an ice bath before. But yeah, it's still different when you go in the sea. Um,
Mm.
so yeah, it's quite crazy. But we'll be doing it again next year, so make sure you come join us
Yeah, no,
for some swimming.
definitely.
Yeah,
Next
but
year,
yeah, I
obviously,
mean, like,
I'm gonna look forward to
it
it.
is not discipline. I mean, I say to people, discipline and motivation is great to get you started, but ultimately, what will change your life will be the habits that you instill. And if you're constantly relying on discipline, willpower,
Mm.
motivation, those things wane. So you use those things to start to build the habit to get you into that state. But if you have, like, most people will have to do it that way, but some people will have what's called an SEE when it comes to NLP, we call it that, a significant emotional event. A
Mm.
significant emotional event can also be an absolute light switch to change a behavior or change a way of looking at things. I don't know that I had any, life-changing experiences but I remember switches that were switched in my head, which then ultimately made me. And one of them, for example, really super simple one. After I did my first UPW, Tony Robbins, in 2012, I didn't think it was life changing at the time, and I'd done a lot of his courses online and lots of NLP and lots of stuff before. So none of it was massively new. Obviously, you've got an experience of 10,000 people there and all of that.
Yeah.
But a few years later, I realized that actually when I left Tony Robbins, that next day I went and bought a juicer. and I made a commitment to myself to juice every day. And I remember exactly where I was when I said that to myself. I said, I'm going to juice every day now. I've got that. And I felt like a switch flick in my head. And I did juice every day pretty much since then. Now, again, like I said, have a framework, but have flexibility within the framework. When you're building the framework, often it's useful to be a little bit more rigid with it. But once you've got that framework built, allowing flexibility allows you to have more of a quote unquote normal life that works for you. So now I don't juice every day, but pretty much every day I'm at home, but occasionally on a weekend, or sometimes I might just not be in the mood. Obviously, when I'm here, I don't have a juicer or a blender, so I think I had to spend a ridiculous amount of money yesterday in some Whole Foods and health food
wow.
store to get a smoothie and a juice. Like 20, I mean, because the thing is, I drink a lot. I drink about half a litre of juice and about 1.5 litres of smoothie a day. So we're talking like 2 litres. And to get 2 litres, it's going to cost me like $30 or $40 to get, because usually they give you like half litre for like $10 of something. So it's like $30 or $40 is too much. So
Wow.
yeah, it's
Wow.
a little bit hard
It's,
to do that.
yeah, and it's wonderful to hear, you know, the how the flick of switch is working for you. And I think a lot of us go through those things. I mean, I myself, I mean, obviously, I started intermittent fasting when I came back from Estonia. It was like a flick of switch. I mean, I've been reflecting back onto it. I was like, oh, how did it just happen? And it was like, yeah, I'm gonna, you know, now just start doing intermittent fasting. And I was like, hang on a minute. I eat at a certain time anyway. So like, oh yeah, I don't eat after 6, 7 p.m. It's late after that. And also, and then when I wake up, I usually wait for a couple of hours before I have anything. So, because I can't eat, you know, I used to say, oh yeah, I can't eat that early anyway. So I'm like, I'm not eating. But then I'm like, okay, I'm doing this without awareness anyway. Now that I'm aware, and if I do it with intention that, okay, I'm going to do intermittent fasting. So I was doing like a 16-hour fasting overnight, obviously, like, you know, and I sleep. Oh yeah, if you eat at 6 p.m. and then I don't eat anything until midday or maybe until 1 or 2 p.m. because I'm like, if I'm not feeling hungry, there's no need to actually eat or drink or anything. I am
Yeah.
obviously, I am drinking water when I wake up. I am drinking water throughout the day until I decide to now have a brunch, so to speak, or a lunch now. You know, so, and that lunch is a massive lunch. I'm like, yeah, let's eat everything now, and then I'll see
Yeah.
how I feel. How I feel by 6 p.m. Do I need to have something? And by that time, I just have like a light snack or something. And, you know, I still have like a food, but light snack or very small portion.
Yeah, and
And then I
as you
see in
get
the morning.
more accustomed with it all, you're gonna, work in adaptability. Like, so what I talk about with intermittent fasting, so I probably started doing it maybe 6 years ago, because I remember doing a talk in 2017 at a place called the Yes Group for their goal setting day. And at the time, I wasn't intermittent fasting, and I set that. So we were setting goals for the year, and I set that as the intention. And I think at the time it was like, oh, try and do at least 12 hours without food, or 14 hours. I typically do about 16 to 18, but I don't think about it as an eating window. Like some people think about it like you eat your food within an 8-hour window or
Yeah.
6-hour window.
Yeah.
I much rather think about it as what was the gap from your last meal of the day to the first meal the next day. The reason I think about it that way is because ordinarily I would like to finish my dinner by 6. Yesterday, for example, I didn't finish dinner till 9. And that's because I was on the trail till 7-ish, 7:30, and then got back, showered, whatever, and went to the place. So then I think, okay, 9. So 9 till 9 the next morning is 12 hours, and then I, add like say another 3 onto that. That's like 15 hours. So I guess I ate something around 12 or 1 today. I think 1 o'clock I had some nuts. So that was 16 hours. So that works better for me. And from a social point of view, like Thursday night, I'll probably go out for dinner in Vegas. I don't think the table's booked till like 8 o'clock. If I was booking for dinner, I'd like to book it at like 6 at the latest. But, it's going to be, by the time you finish dinner, it's going to be 10 o'clock, which for me is really late. And like, I know that it doesn't do me any favors when it comes to my sleep. Like my ring, which is this thing, the Aura ring, which I've had for about 4 or 5 years now, that tracks things. And my deep sleep goes massively down when I eat late at night. And my heart rate is up, which means my HRV is down. So it doesn't really do me any favors, but flexibility within the framework.
Yeah.
I didn't really want to go to bed hungry last night. I would have gone to bed hungry the night before as well because I got into town after everything had shut and I'd driven 5, 6 hours to get from Vegas there back here down here, which is a short drive in the grand scheme of things in America. But I didn't want to eat anything on the way because, like we've talked about the food before in America, the food
Yeah,
on,
yeah,
on, on highways is even worse. So
yeah.
I just can't.
Wow.
I love this country. I just don't know if I could live here just because of food.
That's that's a whole different podcast for you. Now, which reminds me that obviously you have a podcast that you already mentioned as well with your friend Nick, was it? Um,
Yeah, my friend
take
Nick, we've got a
yeah, take us through that.
podcast. Yeah, so actually, what's quite funny about that podcast is, so Nick is a friend of mine that I met 13 years ago. He arranged a cycle trip from London to Paris. And it was back then, it was an email that I got off a mate of mine. So basically, Nick is a mate of a mate of a mate of mine.
Oh, okay.
And and so it was like a mate of a mate of a mate or something. And he was going to Paris, right, London to Paris, and he'd organised, not just self-organised. And I'd always
Yeah.
wanted to do it, so I did that. And then we carried on after that. The following year we did. I missed the following year, but that was Nice to Pisa, and then we've done about 9 in total so far,
Mm.
different trips around Europe. Normally we start in the country we left in, although when we did split to Tirana, we didn't start again in Albania, we started somewhere else. But anyway, Nick and we've always had good discussions on these trips. I tend to see him once a year, and he's like the fittest person I know. He runs a business, an HR business. He runs a couple of other podcasts, does triathlons, obstacle course races at a high level. Like he'll get into it, and he gets into it big style. He'll get invited to world championships
Wow.
abroad for it and stuff. Anyway, we met up last December for the first time in 4 years. Obviously, COVID happened and everything else, and he was in St Albans, and I don't live that far from there, so we met up for dinner, and we ended up starting dinner at 5 because I like an early dinner. And we stayed there till like 9 or 10. So we were the first in the restaurant, last to leave, and we were talking about all sorts of things. And he and I tend to clash on a few things. We're both very respectful of each other, but we have different ideas. All right, I would say I'm definitely more leaning towards, I guess, the mindset and spiritual path, and he wasn't so much. But what's interesting is he's started to like get into coaching. He's reading some of the books that I've read, and his mindset is slightly different now. But anyway, so we were chatting for like 4 hours, and then he called me up a few weeks later. He said, "Do you know what? I always learn something, and I think we learn from each other, and I think our conversations would be interesting for other people. How about we do a podcast?" Now he already runs 2 other podcasts, so he kind of knows the lay of the land. And so, yeah, effectively what we do is we get together once a week on Zoom, although we did it in person last week. Um, and we have a conversation about something. And we don't have any
Mm.
guests or anything like that. We just talk about things and we record it and we put it out there. And it's called the Mindful Paths Podcast. Took us a long time to come up with a name because every name we liked was either taken or whatever. And then we came up with this one eventually after a couple of weeks. It's really the idea of like, we talk about health, well-being, mindset, resilience, longevity, leadership, all of that sort of stuff. And it's the idea that actually we come to things often through different paths, but we try and have a common ground on things. And it's about being aware. It's about understanding that nothing means anything except for the meaning you give it. It's about a whole host of concepts. So
Mm.
yeah, definitely worth checking out. I think we've got some dedicated listeners. Actually, one of our listeners, I've never met her actually, but she was, I think knows Nick, and she's like, I really love listening to the podcast. I really want to give back in some way. She worked in marketing. She's like, I know you don't have an Instagram yet. Can I handle your Instagram? So I was like, oh, cool. Yeah, of course. You know,
Nice.
uh, yeah. So we've relinquished that. I've just seen one of my friends from Mind Valley join, Juana.
I saw
So
that.
she's
I
also
saw that as well.
a well-being guru and yoga teacher and stuff. We met in
Yeah.
Estonia this year,
Yeah, yeah.
which was cool. So hello, Juana. There we go.
Hello, Mana.
Um,
Yeah, we both met her in Mind Valley this year anyway. Yeah, yeah, yeah. This yeah, Mana Mana's been
yeah,
also
there was a
on
couple
her
of other people
own.
actually I saw on, but they've dropped off already, unfortunately. A friend from
Yeah.
last year. If she's watching it on replay, Lachana, I did see you crop on there, so thank you for joining for a few minutes.
Yeah. So, Harry, this has gone a little bit over the actual, the time that we usually have. So, because the conversation was so interesting and amazing, I wanted people to obviously take away as much as they can from Harry, who is here now and sharing everything for the first time with the world as well. Like there's been a lot of first in there that we heard today. So people who've just joined recently, what I would recommend is go and watch the replay. There are lots of golden nuggets for you to take away. We're going to be wrapping this up shortly, Harry, and I like to say that thank you very much for hopping on to this Tuesday Talks. So, two last questions that I will ask is the first one is, what do you know now that you would have preferred or appreciated that if you had known that in your teens, what would that be?
Hmm. What would I like to have known in my teens that I now know? Gosh, there is so much. I guess that everyone's got an inner voice,
Mm,
and that um, it's okay. In fact, not only is it okay to fail, it's necessary to fail in order to succeed. Um, and don't care too much about what other people think, especially those that you don't care too much about yourself. It was like those that mind don't matter, and those that matter don't mind, as it were. But I would say just be confident enough to stand in your truth. Would be one. Um, yeah, so much, but I guess that other people do think like the same in certain ways. So like I think when it came to
yeah,
like spirituality, when it came to um, things, I always had these thoughts about things, and I I just felt I was the only person in the world that thought a certain way,
mm,
which is not necessarily
mm.
true. So yeah, I don't know if that answers it, but there we go. And actually,
Yeah.
all things work out in the end.
I love that all things works out at the end. I think
Yeah,
it's a good
and if they don't
takeaway.
work, if they haven't worked out, then it's not the end yet.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Which takes me to the last and final question. What would you like people who have been listening to this live or replay, or the podcast version, because it will be posted onto as a podcast on Apple and Spotify and all the wonderful places that podcasts are available in a few months' time. What would you like the people to take away from our episode that we've just talked about today?
I guess it would be, going back to this idea where I was talking about me eating crisps and chips and all that, and balance and well-being and health. It's about progress, not perfection. Okay, it's about progress, not perfection, and we all starting in a different place when it comes to,
Mm,
let's say, for example, health or well-being, but anything. And you cannot compare who you are today with who someone else is, because you're comparing maybe your chapter 1 with their chapter 20. So what I would say is that it's about progress, not perfection. Let's say you're making good strides in certain area of your life, and you fall down or you falter or you go back on something. You don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. So you don't have to, like, write off the whole day or the whole week or the whole month. It's
mm.
like forgiving yourself and moving forward. And you don't have to be the person that eats just vegetables and doesn't ever have a Coke ever. It's like, okay, what's the next best thing you can do? And yeah, so progress, not perfection, is what I would say.
I love that. It's about progress, not perfection. I might even use that as the title for your for our episode now. That's actually brilliant. So Harry, thank you very much. And people who've been listening to us live or replay or a podcast version, if you found any aha moments or a bit of spark or a bit of anything that motivated you to take certain step, it's our duty now to share this episode with whomever this came into your mind that should be watching this, because we don't know who's woken up or gone to bed thinking of a better day. And if this episode has created that spark in you, it might just create that spark in them as well, because spark is only what we need to kickstart our engines, to kickstart one step forward. And that might just help them to take that step as well. Hari, thank you very much for your time, and enjoy the rest of your day in the US.
Thank you so much, Zishan, and pleasure to chat with you today. And thank you, everybody that has watched either live replay or listening to us on the podcast. And I hope it's been useful. And remember to connect with me on social media. I'm the Thought Gym, wherever social media, YouTube can be found.
Wonderful. I will be tagging your Instagram there anyway, so they can check everything on the Instagram and follow you from wherever that leads to after. And if they need to get in touch, I'm sure they can send you a DM. And if everybody else as well, if you need to ask a question, or if you have a burning question in your mind, drop them in the comments once this is posted. And I'm sure Hari and myself are able to answer that, because it will be also hosted onto Hari's page as well.
Perfect.
Awesome. Hari, thank you very much. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care, guys. Bye.